Mr. Cornette, I've been listening to your podcast, and your views are not what have been reported by certain people like Keller, Mitchell, and Madden. They've portrayed you. You're going to like this. You're going to love this.
Otherwise known as Larry, Moe, and Curly.
Is there a Shemp?
Actually, we got to figure out who the Shemp would be.
And possibly a Curly Joe.
I bet if there is a Shemp, he works for Keller.
They have portrayed you for years as a Southern right-wing gun-toting racist homophobe. I'm sorry. It's hard to not laugh. This is not the case if anyone with half a brain hears the podcast or the previous bit we just did. It's not like you all of a sudden did a 180. Why have they done this to you, and what's their agenda? Did they do the same thing to Bill Watts?
Wade Keller actually discovered long ago when he first started his when it was still a newsletter before the internet or anything, that if he made shit up that sounded controversial, he'd get more people to subscribe. So he's just subscribed to that theory since then, and he doesn't necessarily make everything up. He just hears shit and doesn't bother to see whether it's true or not. If he likes it and he thinks it'll sell him some subscriptions, and so he can leech money off people who are really in the wrestling business. Mark Madden, Bruce Mitchell falls along in that same category, with Keller. Mark Madden was actually a personal friend of mine because we had known each other through Brian Hildebrand, Mark Curtis, because they grew up in Pittsburgh, not far from each other. And I used to speak in like 89, 90, 91. You speak to Madden on the phone about once a month or so. And, we would, as the British say, we'd take the piss out of deserving individuals. And he even came down to some Smoky Mountain shows one weekend to visit us. And I actually drove him around in my car, bought him a Wendy's, and he ate that fucking thing quicker than I even did. But then he got a job that he'd always wanted to have in wrestling, even though he wasn't equipped for it. He got a job on the 900. Remember the 900 hotlines? Like Gene Okerlund, I can't tell you now, but call me on the hotline. WCW had a 900 number. And I was in Smoky Mountain. I think this was 1994 or so. And I hadn't really thought much about it, but I hadn't talked to Mark Madden in a while at that time. There'd never been any consternation or any bad words or whatever. But I went down to visit Jim Ross and Dennis Brent when JR was coming to do commentary on Smoky Mountain Wrestling. And Dennis Brent said, "Why in the world is Mark Madden just beating the shit out of you verbally on this hotline?" And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" Because I didn't listen to their hotline. Well, Dennis had been in on the ground floor setting their hotline up, so he still knew how to listen to it without paying for it. And he said, "Well, here, listen to some of this." And Madden was just going on about how I'd cheated this guy in Smoky Mountain out of money, and that, one of his things was the heavily bodies would never work for me again because I cheated them on money. Well, that was true up until the time that they worked for me again. And Tom Pritchard to this day remains a good friend of mine. And just none of this stuff was true, but he was knocking me because, he was getting over with Eric Bischoff. And so I called him. I tried to call him, but he would never take my calls. He would even at 8:30 at night, he'd put his mother on the phone and say, he's in bed asleep. What is he? Was he
Wait
Arthur?
He had his mommy talk to you?
Well, he lived with his mother until she passed away. As far as I know, he's my age. He's older than me. He's 50 something. And he lived with his mother until, maybe that's his problem, is he didn't get a lot of pussy probably in his life between his appearance and living with his mother. But anyway, he would never take my calls after that. So I cussed him to her. I cussed him publicly. I did everything to try to get him to explain to me why that he had I thought we'd been friends, and he just rolled over, started knocking me in public just to please his fucking little, prick boss. And then that then I found out it's what they call now, it's feeding the troll, but that phrase didn't exist then. When you let these fucking goofballs, give them some attention by yelling at them, telling them that you're mad at them because they lied about you or they said a bunch of shit, then they just do it more. So every time that he would write something, then I would tell everybody what I thought of him and blah, blah, blah. And then he tries to take credit. He's like Vince Russo. He tries to take credit. Oh, I got Bill Watts fired and I got this done. I got that done. He's like Russo. I invented Stone Cold. I invented The Rock. I invented water, whatever. He's a big fat fucking piece of shit that fucking blows his mouth off. He's been fired. He's been fired more times than I have for running his mouth. Only he wasn't even saying things that people actually could agree with. He got fired from his ESPN radio job for saying that he wished that Ted Kennedy had lived long enough to get assassinated too. He just says shit just to make people mad so that they'll talk about him, because he's like Ian Rotten in the hardcore wrestling world. He has an inordinate desire to be viewed as someone by a small amount of people, and will go to any lengths to achieve that. And so in effect, we've already given him too much attention, but that's the origination of all of that. No, they just, wanted to make shit up when they couldn't figure out any other way to get at me.